Welcome to another episode, everyone. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so, as it goes a long way in supporting my work. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, finally just released the Epstein files involving Donald Trump's S8 abuse charges against this 13 to 15-year-old minor child, this girl, this minor child who was a female. The DOJ had withheld these investigative reports for some time. If you all can recall, earlier this year, the DOJ released the Epstein files. However, the reporters noticed that there was summaries missing from the Epstein files. These summaries are 302 reports filed by the FBI. It's their investigative summary. Whenever they interview a witness, they write out a 302 report, does the FBI, detailing what the interview detailed and intel. When the DOJ released the Epstein files earlier this year, the summaries were missing as they related to Donald Trump. The FBI interviewed this 13 to 15-year-old girl 4 times. This is something that they normally do not do. They followed up with her because apparently they felt like there was some substance there. So they had 4 interviews with her. They detailed the interview that they had with this female victim. When the DOJ released the Epstein files earlier this year, these investigative reports that the FBI had, the interview that the FBI had with said 13 to 15-year-old girl was missing. They interviewed her 4 times. 3 of these times she accused Donald Trump of SAing her in the 1980s when she was 13 to 15 years old. One of the times, in one of the interviews, she accused Jeffrey Epstein. When they released the Epstein files earlier this year, the summary with her detailing the abuse as it related to Jeffrey Epstein was included inside of the files. All other 3 summaries where she accused Donald Trump were missing from the Epstein files. We knew when they released the Epstein files that this was not everything. This was not all of the evidence. They were withholding something. These people are corrupt from top to bottom. This is the DOJ, the Department of Justice. They're supposed to stand for justice. And they are all protecting Donald Trump. They are withholding files. Again, when they released the files, the reporters, when they got the files and read through them, some of these reporters, they noticed that some things were missing. So they confronted the DOJ. The DOJ says that we misplaced, they didn't say that they misplaced the files. The DOJ said that they miscategorized the files. And so here they are. And now they just now released them only because they got caught having unreleased these files as they related to Donald Trump. These investigative summaries that the FBI conducted with the female victim. Now, the female victim in these files, since they've finally been released, we've been able to read them and see why they were trying to withhold them as they related to Donald Trump. The 3 summaries, because in the 3 summaries, the 13 to 15-year-old victim details what happened. She says that she was brought over there to meet Donald Trump again in the 1980s, and that Donald Trump assaulted her, that he got her into a bedroom, physically assaulted her, pushed her down to her knees, and made her perform on him. And when she was laughing and something, she didn't want to be involved in it. And she bit him. She fought back, is what she said. She bit him. Donald Trump became irate, upset, and assaulted her physically, hit her across the head. This is what is in the summary. This explains how come they did not want to release the DOJ. It's all been released now. Nevertheless, the reporters now believe that at least 37 other pages are still missing. This is still not the whole story. At least another 37 pages are missing from the Epstein files as it relates to these investigative reports and the FBI's investigation as to what they found during their investigation while they were taking in the female victim's account of the abuse. And they began to investigate. The conclusion of their investigation is not evident in the Epstein files. They are still withholding evidence as it relates to Donald Trump, the predator, the alleged predator, and the Epstein files. Now let's get into this, and CNN details some of the other stuff that's in the Epstein files and how the DOJ withheld these files and how they have just now come to be released and what's to come next.
Newly released documents that were missing from the Epstein files contain serious, unverified allegations against President Trump. The Justice Department posted 3 FBI memos describing interviews with a woman who accuses both Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump of sexually assaulting her when she was a teenager. The White House calls the accusations completely baseless. CNN's Paula Reed is in Washington with the latest. And Paula, these were missing from earlier file releases, right?
That's right. And this individual was interviewed by the FBI 4 times. And initially, only 1 memo was released in that initial batch of documents released by the Justice Department. And that was an interview where she made allegations against Jeffrey Epstein, but not against President Trump. Now,
this is all so sickening, man. Sickening how these individuals are getting away with this. Here, we have corruption exposed from the bottom to the top. They are trying to dupe you all. They are trying to dupe us all, the American people. They released the Epstein files earlier this year. They released them and said, this is what it is. Here they are. But the whole time, they just happened to withhold the incriminating evidence that points to Donald Trump. How could this be? And then only when they are found out and called out on it, do they release some more, not all, some more of the Epstein files, some of what was missing as it points the finger at Donald Trump. Is it an accident that these files and accusations were not included in the first Epstein file release? Of course not. Donald Trump has handpicked these individuals to help cover this up. He started a war with Iran to distract us from these allegations. He'd rather have American soldiers die in war than face what he has done, what he is accused of. This is sickening. And they all are protecting him, clearly. They did not release the files until they were called out that these files are not here. This part of the file is missing, the summaries. Where are they? The FBI, as Paula Reed just indicated, conducted 4 interviews with this individual, with this victim. One included Epstein. That was included in the Epstein release, but not the 3 that included Donald Trump. That's an accident? What does he have to hide? Why is he telling the DOJ not to release this part? And why are they doing it? Why are they complying with this? They're sanctioning his abuse. Sickening.
Yesterday, these additional summaries were released, and they detail the types of allegations that she made against President Trump, where she describes being introduced to him. She alleges that he asked everyone to leave the room and, quote, mentioned something to the effect of, quote, let's teach you how little girls are supposed to be, and then describes an encounter where he pushes her head down to his penis and then told agents she bit Trump, who then allegedly struck her and said something like, get this little expletive the hell out of here. Now, in her 3rd interview, she allegedly said that she was receiving threatening calls. And in her 4th interview, it's interesting, she told investigators that she was concerned about why she was even coming forward because the statute of limitations had passed. past. Now, I do want to make sure we get in here the fact that President Trump has consistently denied any wrongdoing. In a statement yesterday, the White House described these allegations as, quote, completely baseless, backed by zero credible evidence.
Yeah, completely baseless. And how come you didn't release this from the beginning? If you have nothing to hide, you do not have anything to hide, you are innocent of these gruesome charges, then how come you didn't have these documents released?
The U.S. Justice Department has released documents involving President Trump that had been missing, suspiciously rather, from the Epstein files. They include FBI memos from 3 interviews with a woman who alleges she was sexually assaulted by then citizen Trump when she was a teenager. The president has consistently denied any wrongdoing. We should note that the inclusion of interviews in the Epstein files is not necessarily evidence of wrongdoing. It is an interview. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt slammed the release of the documents, saying in part, quote, "The total baselessness of these accusations is also supported by the obvious fact that Joe Biden's Department of Justice knew about them for 4 years and did nothing with them because they knew President Trump did absolutely nothing wrong," unquote.
How do they know that? How does Caroline Leavitt know that? How does the Biden administration know that? The Biden administration didn't care about it and didn't do anything about it because they are all complicit. The Democrats and the Republicans, they're all in cahoots. They're all sick abusers, all of them. They're all the same. Don't be fooled. So we don't care about the fact that Biden did not release them. I'm curious as to know, how does Joe Biden, Caroline Leavitt, or any of these other politicians know that Trump is innocent of these charges? How do they know that? The FBI are the ones conducting the investigation. They are the ones that interviewed this individual 4 different times. They know what happened more than Caroline Leavitt and Joe Biden does. So how can they say that Donald Trump is innocent of this, that there's nothing to see here, folks, that he did not commit these dastardly crimes? How do they know that? They do not. They're not running the investigation. They have absolutely nothing to do with the investigation. They don't even understand the charges against him, the accusations against him, until they read the Epstein file. They don't know what the victim had to say. But you're going to just automatically dismiss her and say that her accusations and allegations are untrue. What does she have to lie about? This is your people. This is your government. This is the American government in full effect right here. This is what we're looking at. A complete cover-up, covering up predatory behavior by abusers, rich abusers, powerful, rich abusers. And if you agree with this, then you're sick just like they are.
The Trump White House continues to shrug off the scandal. Congress is pushing ahead, voting to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi. The subpoena to testify stems from the House Oversight Committee's investigation into the Epstein files and the federal government's handling of the case against Epstein and his sex trafficking accomplices. My next guest is a survivor of Epstein. Annie Farmer joined.
Yeah, they did. They voted to subpoena Pam Bondi finally. But what is she going to do? What is she going to get in there and do? She's going to be evasive. She's going to do the same thing that they all do when they are summoned to testify as it relates to criminal activity. Deny everything. She's already been protecting these predators. She had a chance to file charges against any of them or all of them long ago. In fact, she closed the case and said that there was nothing to see here, that there's no evidence that warrants any further charges, and has charged no one, even though there are over 1,000 victims. They're all part of a cult. They're all sick.
Just now. Annie, let me start off by saying, I know asking you about the worst experience of your life is not fun for you, not really for me either. How are you?
Oh, I appreciate that, Jake. I'm doing all right. I'm glad to be with you.
What questions might you have for Attorney General Pam Bondi?
I have a lot. I was actually really happy to see that Pam Bondi has, there was people on both sides of the aisle came together to say that she needs to testify between the House Oversight Committee, because I think, when she was in front of the Judiciary Committee, she refused to even acknowledge survivors. The questions that were asked, there was a lot of, deflection and avoidance. And so really, we still don't understand how this release of information was so terribly botched when again and again we see powerful people being protected and information about survivors, not being properly redacted. So I think we have a lot of questions for her.
I'll remind our viewers that when Attorney General Bondi was asked about a matter relating to the Epstein files, she started talking about how the Dow had reached 50,000, and that's what members of Congress should have been focused on. Over the last few weeks, we have seen across the pond in foreign countries investigations start, foreign leaders get in trouble, even a former member of the Royals. There has been some accountability for actions related to the case. What does it tell you that the U.S. government is not, at least as far as we know, doing so in terms of investigations and accountability?
I think a lot of people are looking at this and wondering why. What is it that's different that's happening here? I mean, we know this was a global conspiracy. So, there were people all over the world involved in this operation. And so I'm glad to see that people are doing things overseas. It makes me hopeful that real investigations could happen. But I do feel frustrated that that's not happening here. I think we need more of that.
You were invited to the state.
Imagine the home of the brave, the home of the free. So in all of these other so-called corrupt countries, the people who are involved in the Epstein situation, they're being brought to justice. Only over here in America are they covering it up. Only over here are the individuals involved with this getting away with it. Imagine the outrage of it all. The ones who take a moral high ground in every situation are covering up the abuse of over 1,000 women by the government. You're all sick. If you triple Trump, if you voted for Trump, if you love Donald Trump, you're sick. And as I've said before, if you have children, you need to be investigated. Chances are you've probably done something to those children. If you triple Trump and you love Trump, even after these Epstein releases, these releases that indicate that Donald Trump is a predator who preys on children. 13-year-old girl said after she's performing acts upon him, he gets upset and punches her, slaps her, beats her across the face. A 13-year-old girl. An abuser in every way. This individual, sick. They have a whole cult. The whole government is covering this up. Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem, the DOJ didn't even release it. Wouldn't even release the reports. They're all dirty. All of their hands are bloody. And if you still support Donald Trump, you MAGA maggots, then your hands are bloody as well. I say that the Child Protective Services need to come and have a talk with your children and make sure that they are safe and are not being abused now and have not been abused in the past, because clearly you subscribe to abuse. Clearly you're okay with abusers. Clearly you're okay with 80-year-old men abusing little girls. So if you have a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, and you voted for Trump and you still support Trump even after the Epstein file release, after this new information has come to light, just the allegations alone are enough to keep your child away and to withhold your support, at least until it's all rectified. But if you still support Trump in this day and age today, after the new file releases, where a 13 to 15-year-old girl indicated that she was abused by this individual, and you have children, you need to be investigated. I would not be surprised if you have abused that child or you know someone who has abused your child and you've just been okay with it. You'll probably let Trump abuse your child. Just because he's rich and powerful. You're part of the problem. You're sick too. If you have children, I'm going to say it again, and you support Donald Trump, you need to be investigated. Your kids need to be taken out of your home. They are not safe there. If you believe that this behavior is okay, and you do, if you continue to support someone who exhibits this behavior, then you believe that it's okay. And if you believe that it's okay, you need to be investigated and your child needs to be taken out of the home quickly.
State of the Union address last week. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, I was able to go with Congressman Robert Garcia, and he's been a real champion for this investigation in the House Oversight Committee. So I was glad to be there with him. It was actually pretty challenging, though, to sit through Trump's speech when it seemed like he just had a different vision of the country that he was presenting, a different vision of events. He, of course, did not acknowledge any of the survivors that were present, and we weren't really expecting him to, but we were there to remind him that we're not going away, that, the United States, I think, is very much still interested in getting to the bottom of this and wants answers.
Annie Farmer, thank you so much, and best to your sister as well. We appreciate your coming here today and know it's not easy.
A very rare and stunning rebuke of the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, by members of the president's own party. Yes, 5 Republicans on the key House Oversight Committee defying their chairman and joining with Democrats to subpoena Bondi over the Justice Department's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case.
CNN crime and justice correspondent Caitlin Polantz is here with us. So tell us more about what these lawmakers want from the Attorney General.
Well, they're making a turn. A lot of this investigation the House Oversight Committee has done around Jeffrey Epstein has been talking to people about Epstein himself. They brought in former President Bill Clinton for a deposition. They had Bill Barr, a predecessor of Pam Bondi. But now it's a question of how the Justice Department under Bondi's watch handled the redaction, the processing, and the public release of these files after Congress mandated transparency for them. The Representative Nancy Mace, a Republican on the committee, was the one that moved to subpoena Bondi for testimony about this and has made clear one of the issues here for the committee is that not all of the Epstein files have been released. Congress is not happy with the Justice Department and with Pam Bondi. And really, it has been a boondoggle for the Justice Department as they've been.
And they should not be happy with her. She needs to resign and resign immediately. So should Kristi Noem. Withholding evidence. They're all corrupt. She's going to, yes, they subpoena her to testify, but she's not going to be forthcoming with her testimony. It's all a ruse.
Working through these files and getting them up. There were failures to redact information of victims, exposing survivors' private information. There are documents that have not been released still and questions about that. And all
documents that have still not been released. As I just said, we already know that. We know that they're withholding documents and evidence because they withheld this until confronted with the fact that people knew that this evidence had been withheld, and then they were forced to release these documents. They released the Epstein files months ago, but this wasn't in there. Why is that? Only when confronted, it wasn't released just recently. So it's not astounding or implausible that they are withholding more evidence now or more of the Epstein files. Of course they are. Who knows how deep this thing goes? These people are trying to cover this up because they all need to be doing life inside of prison. They're all guilty. They're all sick. Who knows how far this abuse went? Clearly, very far, because they're going through extensive lengths to cover it up. Bottom line,
So Pam Bondi is the person who a year ago said that the Epstein client list was on her desk, and that never materialized as a real thing. So it's going to be a really tough deposition for Pam Bondi. We're waiting to see what the Justice Department does to respond.
We'll wait with you, Caitlin Polk.
Yeah, we'll wait with you. These sick people make me sick. Let me know what you think in the comments. There you have it. Donald Trump in the newly released Epstein files. He's been in the Epstein files, period, but they withheld this particular information, did the DOJ, until confronted, called out on it, and then came with some nonsensical excuse and then released it. In these new files, the new documents released, we discovered why they were withholding it. Well, because a 13-year-old girl, she says that she was 13 to 15 years old at the time, says that she met Donald Trump in the 1980s and that he assaulted her and abused her. These were missing from the file. These people are sick, and there's still files missing, as we know. This is your government. And again, if you support this and you support Donald Trump, you need to be investigated. You're sick. You need to check up on your child. If you triple Trump, if you're a MAGA maggot, then you need to be investigated quickly. Stay safe and stay free. And I mean that with everything I have. You need to be investigated.